No one's smiling. There we go. Steven's smiling. How's everybody doing?
I
I was looking at work email, so.
Did I see the cheers background, Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, unfortunately, that did come up.
That's your new office, Jim?
Hi, Robin. Wouldn't that be great?
Yep, real close.
Seth will be an hour out, so he may not be able to make it. He's teaching tonight.
So Neil, on the Channel 9 News at 5, they were broadcasting from our town hall. Was there some story that they were planning to cover?
I went out at one point and they're paving the driveway across the street, so it was really loud, but Jean Lightfoot was being interviewed.
Oh, okay. I'm sure she'll do an excellent job.
But they weren't here very long. So I don't think.
That means it's good news they're reporting.
That's right. Yes. When they camp out front, it's when we don't like it.
So do we have everybody besides Seth who might be late? Okay. So, Jim, I think we can both just call to order, and then I did volunteer to read the lovely spiel. So I think we both should just say the first paragraph of this right to know checklist, basically that due to the COVID-19 crisis in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board, the Select Board, is authorized to meet electronically. So I don't know if you want to make the same declaration for the school board, and then I'll read the checklist.
Yeah, I will make that same declaration that Sabrina just read very nicely on behalf of the school board. Because of those emergency declarations, the school board meets virtually as well.
Okay, excellent. So I will read the right to know law meeting checklist. So there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm we are doing the following. A, providing public access to the meeting by phone with additional access by video or other electronic means. So we're using Zoom tonight. All members of our boards have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through Zoom. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by dialing 646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 340-316-049. We've also provided a Zoom website. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the town's website and the Town of Hopkinton's Facebook page and Hopkinton School District's website. The town website's hopkinton-newhampshire.gov. The school website's hopkintonschools.org. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call 603-746-8242, or you can email townadmin@hopkinton-newhampshire.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn and have the meeting rescheduled. And all votes, although I don't think we'll be taking votes jointly, but all votes will be taken by roll call vote. A few other notes that are helpful to know: the meeting's being recorded and will be available to watch at a later time. The link to watch will be on both the town and school websites. The school board and select board members are all unmuted, but everyone else is muted. If you have a question during the meeting, you can raise your hand to let us know you have a question. The chat function has been disabled for this meeting. And during the public forum, I think there are 2 chances for public comment. Lines will be unmuted to allow folks to speak. And please be respectful of everyone as we try to manage all of this. Thank you for your cooperation. So should we each do our roll call attendance? Yeah, Neil? Yeah, Jim? Okay. So we'll do select board. So state your name and presence, and also whether there's anyone in the room with you, which is required under the right to know law. So this is Sabrina Dunlap. I'm alone in my office. I'll go to Stephen.
Stephen Whitley alone in this room.
Ken Trom,
Ken Traum alone in this room.
Anna Wells,
Anna Wells, I'm alone in this room.
and Jeff Donahoe.
Jeff Donahoe alone in this room.
All right.
All right. And for the school board, I'm Jim O'Brien, and I am alone in my pantry with a lot of food. So if anybody's hungry, you can come on over. Andrea.
Andrea Folsom, I'm alone in my living room.
Mr. Goupel.
Norm Goupel, I am here and I am with my cat Link.
Rob.
And Rob Nato, and I am alone in the basement.
And that is us. And Seth A. Frame may be joining us in a little bit. He's otherwise occupied at the moment.
So we have on here call to order / pledge of allegiance. So I don't know if I don't know how you normally do that with your school board meetings via Zoom.
We have a flag that that magically appears on the screen.
Beautiful.
Well, I can start us off.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Jim. So we have first on the agenda additions / deletions from the agenda. I don't know if anyone has any changes to the joint agenda.
No, I think it looks good.
All right, so the first, so the next thing we have is public comment round 1.
So Sabrina, do you want people, anybody to raise their hand if they have a public comment?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm used to sort of having automatic notification from Neil when somebody's raised their hand. Doesn't look like anybody's raising their hand. We do have a couple call-in folks. So Neil, if they want to speak, how do they?
If they press *9, that will raise their hand.
Okay, so call-in people, if you want to speak, you can do *9. All right, well, so we'll have a second chance for public comment after we've had further discussion. So is everyone good with closing this round of public comment? Okay. All right. Okay, so next we have comments from the school board and the select board. So Jim, do you want me to kick us off? Okay. And select board folks, if any of you have something you want to add, just jump in. But I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. It's lovely to see all your faces together. I think I just wanted to say sometimes I think it's easy to sort of slip into this siloed way of thinking that like, oh, something's a town issue or something's a school issue, when in reality, we're all very interconnected. So it's lovely to meet and talk about issues that affect us all together. And I think, you know, I firmly believe we don't have this amazing community without our wonderful schools, and vice versa. We don't have these amazing schools without our engaged, amazing community. So it's sort of this great symbiotic relationship, I'd say. Obviously, this year has been very, very, very difficult for all of us. So I just want to say thank you to the school board for navigating these really crazy, challenging times with such care and thoughtfulness. And thank you for everything you do to keep our schools running, from administrators down to all the teachers and everyone on the board. And finally, I will just say I am very grateful for this community, and Hopkinton has so many people who are committed to the well-being of this town and to our schools, and that ranges from all sorts of volunteer positions to these many board positions. And I'm just really grateful for all the people who help make this town better and give it such a great sense of community. So, so many people put so much time and energy into keeping Hopkinton wonderful and giving us this great sense of community. So I just wanted to say thank you. So I will turn it over to you now, Jim.
Thanks, Sabrina. And I guess I'll just ask any school board member who has any comments, just to unmute yourself, and then we can sort of go in order. And if you don't have anything, that's also fine. But I want to give everybody the opportunity. No,
I'll gladly go first. I usually go first. I just want to say thank you to the select board for meeting with us. I appreciate everything you guys have done for this town. Try to see all your meetings as much as I can. I'm a little sad we're meeting virtually. Last time we met, I brought cookies. Remember, Stephen, those cookies you brought home? And I promise you, next time you're in person, I'll bring cookies. It was really great last time we met, and I was really looking forward to meeting you guys again, because it's always great to connect, two boards and have discussions to, connect the dots on quite a few issues that we actually are together with. So thank you so much for meeting with us, and I look forward to the meeting. And just the observation in the town of Hopkinton, it's been really great seeing the Halloween decorations. I've been loving seeing the scarecrows, and just a great feeling going on at Hopkinton. And just thank you to the community for making this time a really good eventful time, considering we're going through a pandemic. But that's all I want to say. Thanks, guys.
any other members? So I don't want to, I'll echo what Sabrina said, because I don't want to repeat what Sabrina said. The only thing I would add is I just want to recognize the work that that Steve Chamberlain and Neil Cass do. I know we only meet once a year and consume Norm's cookies, but Steve and Neil, I know, meet and discuss on an ongoing basis. And I know, talking to Steve, he often remarks on the great advice that Neil provides, especially around RSAs and how we should be, making sure that we're doing our homework right. And I know, having worked with Neil also shares, his conversation and confidence in Steve as they talk and sort of work on things together. And so that, I know, while we don't meet all the time, I know that our leadership is meeting often to discuss issues, which is great. And that goes beyond just Neil and Steve, because I know, like, our police and fire chief, work with our principals and our school buildings. And so there is a lot that we do together that maybe our boards don't always see, or our boards aren't involved in. But I do want to recognize that, because I think it's great for the community that Steve and Neil have such a strong working relationship together. And I just hope that continues, and we can kind of keep strengthening our leadership positions, working with each other, because I think it's better for the taxpayers and it's good for our town. So thanks, guys.
If I can add on, I want to echo what everybody has said so far, and just maybe to bring a little light to it. I am so glad I'm not on the school board, and you are this year, particularly.
And that's funny.
Yes, it is.
I want to make sure that's in the minutes, Robin. That's
What, that it's funny?
no, his comment.
I am.
Anyone else? All right. So next up, we have presentations and staff reports. So first, we have impact of COVID on operations and budgets, and we have first the town and then the school district.
I'll just note from has been a hard budget year, and I'm sure next year will be too as we put that together. There have been added expenses and different expenses, although I will say that on the town side, we've been fortunate with the Gopher grants and the election grants, that has helped do that. But as we look, when we talk a little bit more about budget drivers, we'll talk a little bit more. But I think there's still a lot of unknowns as we go into 2021, and certainly we don't have as many unknowns as the school. But they are there, and makes it that much harder to plan and do that, as well as having town meeting in July and you finishing your budget in August. It's been quite the year.
Can I ask a question? I'm just sort of curious, and this is more just operational, and I haven't been following it as much. But the town has a lot of staff sort of diffused. How has just the operation of your staff been working? I assume it's been more challenging and probably things have slowed down, but just sort of curious how that's sort of manifested itself in terms of your employees and how they interact and function.
Well, some of our employees are essential. Well, everyone is, but police and fire certainly have stayed largely the same, as well as highway through it all. During the initial time the town hall was closed and we had staff here, we had staff working from home for the most part, and the town hall was closed into June. And even now the Slusher Center is closed. All staff is working except the rec director has actually gone down to halftime, through furloughed down to halftime during this time because of that change. But other than that, and staff meetings are via Zoom, like all meetings these days and things like that. We've tried to function as normally as possible with strict protocols put in place.
How is the, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in unless anybody else wants to. I'm just curious how have calls been up on sort of the ambulance side, and just curious how they're responding.
So initially calls dropped substantially. People probably who should have been going to the hospital were avoiding it because they basically were afraid of COVID and being at the hospital. Beginning in really June on, calls have gone up. You've probably seen in the news that Warner has a spot that one of their elder care places has had a severe breakout of COVID, and we transport those people. So that has had a fairly big effect. And right now Merrimack County's gone up. So we saw a drop, and now we're pretty close to making up all the calls that didn't happen. And we probably will end with more calls this year than we've had any other year. So, and I would anticipate that will continue into 2021. I would also say that the police have had more restraining orders and things like that this year, not necessarily domestic and related, but neighbor to neighbor and things like that. With people being home, as well as with all the added stress of this, they've seen a dramatic increase in calls and different situations that they're dealing with.
I guess my other question, Neil, is how food pantry working? Is it still up and running and things going well with that?
The food pantry is working and people have been very supportive and donations have been great. There has been a change in volunteers, some who couldn't, who had some, were compromised themselves, so couldn't volunteer, but other people have stepped up and done that. So that has been good. In the beginning, we started Hopkinton Cares, which was coordinating volunteers with people in need. That has pretty much dwindled. We're down to just a few people now, but we kind of expected that to be there to be more of a need there. But in the Hopkinton way, neighbors really helped neighbors, and I think took care of that to a large extent. And then it was good to have Hopkinton Helps as a backup to that.
I will send you over an information this week to contact if they're looking for some bread. The church I go to is always looking forward to give her all this bread. Like, I mean, like whole name brand. So if they're looking for bread or bagels or English muffins, they're always looking for food pantries to donate. So I'll send you that information over and reach out to them. So if they're short any.
That'd be great. And I will pass that on to Marilyn.
Thank you.
And I don't know if it's still too early to know this, but how have sort of tax collections been? Have you noticed a drop off? Have there been more people with inabilities to pay because of the economy and where we're at? I'm just curious.
Tax collections for the July billing were better than normal. A lot of people have escrow accounts, so that certainly helps, and more people have escrow accounts. So we will see, and that's what we've been hearing. That's what I've heard from other towns, that the collections have been good. We don't know. We'll know better in the next month or so when the final billing of the year goes out, how people have been affected more so. But in general, they were better than normal.
And Jim, just sort of along that same line, I've been regularly reporting to the select board what the Hopkinton specific unemployment rate is that's reported by the state, and it's 3.3%.
Should we move on to the school district?
Sure. And I don't know, Steve, we didn't practice or prepare this together. So I don't know if you want to hop in, and then we can, I don't want to put you on the spot though.
Sure. And if you want to start, it doesn't matter. I'm happy to. For us, getting the schools ready, we're about over upwards of $80,000 in PPE. We got $46,000 through the CARE grant, but we were recently just notified of about $200 per student as supplemental funding. So that will certainly help that area. We spent a lot of time on air circulation in our schools this year. Maybe Jim will probably speak to our work with the associations on how we've developed that piece. The funding, we've had to add a couple of positions to provide. We added a custodial position just for our high touch cleaning. And we've added a new category of employees and working with our support staff called remote learning assistant, because we have about 5, 6, 7 or so teachers working remotely due to accommodations through the Americans with Disabilities Act under a pandemic. So we've added a couple of positions there. And we're still monitoring. Michelle does a good job monitoring the PPE use. We want to make sure we have it on hand, but we don't want to go too far out as well. I think those are most of the budget piece. Operations, we've all heard, we're in a 50% in for the 6-foot guideline. So there's an in-school day and that home day. We're trying to work on that. Actually, this week we'll be talking with the board about our next iteration, just because we're trying to be continual improvement. We've been out. So the Harold Martin was out for 2 weeks, and the high school was out 2 weeks so far this year, due to positive testing and how we can manage schools with staff and things like that. We've been able to run sports pretty well as far as program and operations, and we'll take up winter sports coming soon, which portends to be enjoyable experience as well. Jim, does that provide enough background for you?
No, that's great. Thanks, Stephen. I mean, I'll just add a few things. And I think the first one is just, I guess how amazing I found, you know, our administration and our teachers and our staff during this time. I mean, it's, I guess, you know, I came to the school board understanding what it takes to have a school and a normal education. I'd never really thought about what it takes to run a school during a pandemic. And how to have, you know, 1,000 students, hundreds of staff inside of buildings, and just the amount of preparation and time it takes to both, you know, be a good employer to those people, to be good teachers, and make sure we're educating kids, and then to be a good communicator and working with parents who have a lot of individual needs and a lot of individual concerns, as well as concerns about the health and safety of the community. And so anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge just the amount of work and stress and solutions that our team, and especially Steve, has brought to the table in order to, I guess, open school safely. And we've, you know, the hybrid model hasn't been universally accepted, I think, by everybody across town as being the best model. But I do think well, I probably wouldn't argue that it's the best model for education. I do think that having students come into our school buildings after not being in school buildings since March, I think has been a success, because I think those students are getting some of the social emotional needs met. I think them having some sort of a normal routine is good. And I think for the teachers, having students in the classroom has been good. And then I think for families, and especially for parents who need to go to jobs and be out of the home, having a place, a safe place to have their students in schools has been pretty amazing. So we're continuing, you know, continuous improvement and learning as we go is sort of part of our strategy. It's probably not the most popular part of our strategy, but you know, managing through a crisis just means you got to learn and adjust. And so I think we're doing that. We could probably do a better job sometimes communicating out, and we have a lot of people who come to our meetings, but we know there's a lot more families and a lot more people who don't attend our meetings. And so we could do better communicating the opportunities and what's going on as we move forward. But this year has been interesting, incredibly challenging. And I just think as we look to the next budget in the year ahead, it's going to continue to be so. And so I just want to thank, you know, I know that, you know, we work with Neil, and we've been working with the police and fire and others. And it's been a great collaboration, especially as we started thinking through how we're going to keep everybody safe in school, how we keep everybody masked in school. It's been a real challenge, but I think we're making good progress. I don't know if any other board member on the school board wants to offer up anything. Everybody's quiet today. I'm not quite sure why.
Because you said it perfectly, Jim.
Oh,
We
that's
just
so nice.
echo what you just said.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next item, which is an update on the George Park project. So is that Neil?
Is that me? I don't want to do all the talking. So I think it was a very successful George Park project. It's the beginning of what could be years of upgrades and maintaining George Park. The drainage off the high school driveway has been corrected, and I think moving the driveway makes that a much safer area for buses and students coming in and parents coming in, and so I really want to thank the highway department that sort of designed that and did that. The engineers did help with the drainage, but other than that, they sort of put that plan all together, and it was jointly paid. The school paid for the drainage, and the town work did that. And I think it's a big improvement for not a lot of money. I think it was a big bang for the buck.
Neil, are there any plans for anything in FY22 for the next stage? Or are we pretty okay for FY22? Because we took this out of the maintenance trust and we're just trying to get ready for the next iteration.
Yeah, I think the next one is FY23.
Okay.
As we go through looking at as the plan is now, which hasn't really been reviewed, but as the plan that was used last year, it would be doing the restrooms and upgrading that area in 23.
Perfect. Thank you.
One of the areas that I'm interested in, I know it's in the plan somewhere, but I don't remember when. So the town took down the trees along Park Ave, which I think was needed. And so this isn't a complaint that the town took down trees on Park Ave, but it's more, I think when the tree's gone, the one thing I think at least I notice is just the deterioration of the fence and sort of the fence along Park Ave and somewhat when you go by the skate park. And so I'm just curious, like where that sits in sort of the in the larger plan. And I just think, you know, I mean, that's sort of the entranceway to the school. And if there's anything that, you know, we could help with potentially to move that along. So I do think, you know, maybe I don't know what it costs to replace a chain link fence like that, but that might be an area where we can make, probably without a lot of cash, we could really make that area look a lot better. Especially now with sort of the trees gone, it sort of stands out more than I think it did, you know, the past couple of years. I don't know, but that's just my opinion. I don't know how others feel about that.
I think that it would be great to look into having the trees replaced as part of that as well. I think I know there's been comments about now there's no shade. And you know, street trees are really, really important in the world that I come from, my urban planning world. And I think that would be a really nice thing to add to the plan. And I don't know if there's any, I haven't looked at it super closely lately, but in terms of the budgeting, I don't know if there's room in any of our budgets for anything like that, or if it could be something that you know, the town and school jointly try to sort of fundraise for on the private level is another sort of option that we could potentially pursue. Just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I'd agree that it would be nice to replace the trees, and I would think the first thing to do would be to go to the different landscape companies in town or Rotary or Lions to see if they'd be interested in putting in the trees.
That'd be great.
And Neil, was the replacement of the fence, was that part of the George Park plan when that came out? I thought it was, but I don't remember.
It is replacement. I can't remember exactly when it is, but the replacement of the fence along the parking lot is in process or will be in process now as part of this, because after that work, that fence was taken down and will be not the one that was there, but another one will be put back. So that is in process and hopefully will be done before winter.
Okay, I just had a child come in here in a sheepdog costume, so I had to go off my video for a sec. So anything else on George Park, or can we move on to the school district facility project?
I guess I just have one question for Neil, and seems to me putting off the restrooms to 2023, which is 3 years away, that structure is abysmal. You know, from having done fundraising out of that side room, and I know the restrooms have been improved a little bit, but if there's anything there that could be ushered to a sooner date, boy, that would be terrific. I know Dan Meserve would be one happy guy, as would everybody who goes to watch games there, because it's in rough shape.
I think it's actually scheduled for summer of 22, which would be school budget 23. So I think, so there's a year.
Got it. There's a year. That was easy, Neil. See how you did that?
Good work.
Thanks, Neil, for that clarification.
So school facility project. I don't know, Norm or Steve? I don't know who wants to tackle that one.
Want to do it, Steve?
Sure, absolutely. You go.
All right, I'll go for it. First I want to say, thanks to the town of Hopkinton for, of course, voting for the bond a couple years ago. Please just say it's been great to see this board execute it, and I say thank you to the school board for that. It's been a lot of hours working on it. Thank you to Steve, Michelle, and Jay Burgess for all their help to get this going, and to BPS and HL Turner on really coming up with a great plan for our school district in order to completely what they voted on, complete the project to what the town has asked for. Everything that we had discussed in that district meeting, our goal is to complete it to the finest. We've done some renovations at the bathrooms, which are complete. We've done some roofing at the high school and Maple Street. We continue to work on other parts of the roof at the high school, which we're going to be completing at some point. The most important thing I can tell you guys is that we've exceeded what's been asked from us on this building project thus far. We were able to add on a 4th classroom, which is fantastic. I'm very thankful for Chief Yale helping us out with the fire suppression and giving us some guidance on that. It's very important that we were able to get that in this fiscal year in order to receive a grant from the state. So that's something that's very important, and at much less cost. That's the cost of like a 1.5. It's less than that, about 300,000 ish around there. We've exceeded. We've had some teacher space over at Harold Martin. We've done some other rooms there too, which is outside the scope of the bond. So there's been a lot of things that we've been able to do with this bond that I'm very pleased to say that it's looking really great. We've moved all our work right now over to Harold Martin, where if you guys go there, you guys can see some steel pillars are already started going up and everything, and it looks really great. The construction team has been following COVID procedures, which is very important to me. They've maintained that with strict guidance. The most important thing of this project to me, into the town, especially for this board to discuss, is, we came back significantly with a less tax impact. When Steve quoted this back many years ago, I think it was quoted at 104. Is that correct, Steve? About?
Yeah, that's the area. It was over $1 tax impact.
So right now we are about 0.76 all said and done, between 0.80, which is much less. And we're doing level debt for the next 20 years on that. So it was a good time to bond. The rates were low, and that really will help us in our budgeting process for years to come. Again, I thank Steve, Michelle, Jay, and this board, and BPS, and Gordon Bristol for all their leadership on this job. It's been great working with Rob to oversee this project for our taxpayers, and it's going very, very well. I do invite this board, once this pandemic is over, to join us in a tour to see our facilities, because I think you guys will be very pleased with what's happened and following through with our promise to the taxpayers and what they voted on. Steve, if I missed anything, you're happy to jump right on in.
I think you did great. No, thanks, Norm.
Can I ask a quick question? I might have missed this. What's the plan for because we only bonded half this year. What's the plan for the rest? Did I miss you say that? Sorry.
And we'll be bonding in July. We'll be doing the same. We're preparing for the second round, and we don't think the rates are going to move too much, so we think we're in a pretty good place.
Great, thanks.
All right, thanks. Norm, anything else on the facility project? All right, so next we have items for discussion, and we're starting off with elections during a pandemic. So we have COVID precautions and safety and security. So Neil, is this you again?
Do a brief update. I think probably most of you voted or saw what was set up in September for the primary. We'll be doing a very similar thing with outside voting for anyone without masks, drive up availability of dropping off absentee ballots. Everything, people are pretty, I guess I could use the word herded in a very small area, in and out, and encouraged not to do what everyone loves about voting day, talk to each other and be able to be in community, but that won't be happening. We will have 5 check-in tables instead of 3, so we're anticipating it being busier. We also have been monitoring very closely other towns and sort of security type issues. We have a detail officer who is there the entire day. The police department is also available. The regular duty officers as well as other members are there. Should we have any reason for that, we are hoping that that is not the case, but we are ready for that. Everybody inside wears masks and uses hand sanitizer, and it seemed to go pretty well for the primary. It probably will be twice as busy for the general election. As of last Tuesday, a week ago today, I know more than 1,300 ballots had been sent out, and over 1,000 had been received, and it felt like 1,000 people voted here today. It's been steady with people coming in and getting their absentees and filling them out and leaving them. So our initial estimate was about 2,000 absentee ballots and over 2,000 people voting in person. Our checklist a couple of weeks ago went over 5,000 for the first time. I think we're over 5,100 at this point. So that's our anticipation. I really want to thank, for the primary and coming up now, the school custodial staff and Noah, as he helped us get ready for that and have everything ready. Everything was really, really good and well done and ready. And so that was a huge help. So thank them for that.
And there's no school again, Neil, for that day, just parent guardian conferences that day.
Thanks, Neil. Do you know if Sarah Pacino is looking for more volunteers, or is she set?
If anyone would like to volunteer, they should contact her. Because I think she was sort of set, but things can change. So she's keeping a list and trying to make sure things are very well covered. So if anyone would like to volunteer, they should contact her.
Yes, Sarah Pacino, our town moderator. And there's also lots of info on the town website about voting. And thanks for that overview, Neil. I just know, having gotten the walkthrough for primary day and then being there almost all day with many of you for the primary, so much work went into that, and so much more work is going into this. I mean, it seems like things have changed almost daily, guidance or lack of guidance, whatever, coming from Secretary of State's office, and Sarah Pacino and others in town have just worked so hard to make sure things run smoothly. So I will hope that we don't have any issues, but I would also ask that everybody who shows up has patience and understands that everyone is doing this for the first time in this way, and everyone's doing the best they can to make it run smoothly. So anyone else have questions or comments on the election?
And you can still vote, right?
Go for it, Norm.
No, it's just, you can still register to vote that day, right? If, let's say, you turn 18 before November 3rd, you can still, okay, good.
Yes, you can register to vote on election day.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, Andrea.
No, that's okay. And they're going to start processing. Are they starting to process the absentee ballots a couple days before this time? And that's an open, I saw that was open to the public as well, correct?
That will happen on this Saturday. Halloween here at the town hall beginning at 10 a.m. And what happens is the outer envelope is opened and the checklist, the person is not checked off, but the checklist is marked. And then that day, beginning at 8 a.m., they will start processing them. And so it should be much quicker this time. Any ballots that aren't valid for some reason, their inner envelope isn't there or the affidavit isn't signed, they'll do their best to contact those people so they can correct that before the 5 p.m. deadline on Tuesday.
And folks can deliver absentee ballots to the town clerk's office in person up until 5 p.m. on Monday, November 2nd. But then you can't drop off absentee ballots at the clerk's office on election day, just so people know. But you can drop them off at the polls in our outdoor tent that Rob, Nato, and I manned on primary day and probably will again. So anyway, the website does, the town website, I think, does a great job laying everything out. So I encourage people to visit that if they have questions. And anyone else? All right. So next on our agenda is notable areas of collaboration. We have social services and facilities / maintenance. I don't know who's kicking us off on this.
I think that was me a little bit. Just wanted to thank and recognize that there's a couple of different areas in which the school and the town collaborate in this genre, and that is through Hopkinton Cares. We meet quarterly. We do Got Lunch. We do projects. We do all, and Maryland is very much devoted to that work, and we get to meet and we talk with extraordinary people. And the other piece is we have a Hopton Family Support Team, interagency. Chief Pecora sits on that team. So does Maryland. Gordon Crouch. We've got DCYF. We've got Riverbend. We've got Merrimack County Services. We've got a couple of advocates in town, and that meets monthly. Donna Dunlop, she works with us on all the community-wide book reads and all the educational programs we can offer. So just in the area of social services, there's really a very robust collaboration that I very much appreciate learning from and participating with. And I'm just really, really fortunate, a great relationship with Maryland and everyone from the town. So I just wanted to recognize and make sure that that was aware of the community in both boards. The other piece was always done lots of facility and maintenance, but this was the first time we were able to jump on the town's paving bid. And we've got the wonderful driveway of the SAU building paved under the town's bid. We appreciate joining the economy of scale issue, and Dan did a great job helping us. And we worked through a little bit of a water issue with the precinct, but we got through that, and we have now a nice smooth driveway, which I think Dan would like as he plows it. So I think it was a little bit of double support for Dan as he plows us, but I don't have to slip on ice as much when I head out to the car as well. So we appreciate the town's support of managing the bid and including the SAU office and its district on that bid. That was the first time we've jumped into a bid like that. We've talked about it, but we finally hit some timing on that one, and the schools gained some economy of scale working with the town. So I just appreciate both of those and wanted to bring those forward tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else have anything to add in this item? All right. Next, we have our annual meeting schedules. So we have voting, opportunities for collaboration / communication, and then the proposed dates for both the school district meeting and the town meeting date as well. So I don't know who wanted the opportunities for collaboration for voting on here. If someone wants to speak to that.
Might have been me. I don't know. But I can speak to it. So, I think we can all assume that our town meetings are going to look similar to what our town meetings look like over the summer, not so much what our traditional town meetings look like normally. At least that's how I'm assuming we're going to be doing some sort of virtual town meetings, school district meetings, and then a drive-by vote. And so one of something I've just been kicking around, like, should we think, are there other ways that we want to get the information out? Normally it's a lot of printed, annual reports. I know we've been doing less of the printing and maybe making them more available online. I'm just wondering if we want to do more of that. It just feels like, especially if we're going to be in a Zoom world, through our planning rather than through default, as we sort of were last year, was sort of a default move. But if we have, the next 5 months or so to sort of plan how we want to communicate to the town and sort of using the new technology, are there any changes that we might think about that will help people sort of interact with us in that way, rather than trying to just squeeze the square peg of how we normally do town and district meeting into sort of the new reality? I don't know what all those are, but it feels like we have an opportunity maybe to do things a little bit differently in order to take advantage of sort of how we're going to have to conduct business. And we don't have to do it in so much of a reactive way as we did last year, but we have time to sort of contemplate how we might do it so that all voters have a sort of, we can just present our information differently and maybe better to voters taking advantage of technology. I don't have any answers, and so I'm throwing out a bunch of nice words with no real solutions, but I'm wondering if maybe there's work that we can do over the winter and in the early spring to kind of think about some of how we present the information normally, and maybe adapting some of it to sort of meet the needs of our voters who are going to be voting and retaining this information differently than they have in the past.
I think that's a great thing to be thinking about in a proactive way, Jim. I think that's an excellent point to be making now here in October. It feels like it's a long way away, but it's really not. We have, less than 6 months. So I think that's really great. And I'd love, if there are folks out there listening who are like, oh, I really wish that I had this presented to me in paper, or this presented to me in, virtual, in digital format only, like, let us know, like shoot us an email, whatever. I think it's important to hear from people what they did and didn't appreciate about how information was presented last year or this year. I do think that it's important, for almost more important in some ways, for folks to have something tangible in their hands as they're sitting at home at their kitchen counter or wherever they are, because not everybody has the capability to print things at home, and some people it's just have to. I'm kind of one of them. I love to have the paper and if I'm using my computer for my Zoom session, I can't be looking up my, notes on the budget PDF or whatever. So I think having some paper available is still really important. So I would just say that. And I think thinking about getting information out in new and better ways is half-ish of the situation. I think the other half of it is, making if we are going to be sticking with all of these Zoom and virtual sessions, is there a way to streamline the voting also, considering a single voting session for both meetings, considering ways to streamline people's time on the Zoom meetings, whether it's, back to back or joint or whatever. I think I don't have the answers either. Sorry. But I think if we can, start putting our heads together around this now, that is fantastic. So thank you for bringing that up. If you, in fact, were the one who wanted this on the agenda.
Neil, that's what I was thinking also. Is there an RSA saying that we have to be, I know town moderator sets the date and all that if it's changed, but is there an RSA that we have to be a week between each other if potentially this ends up being another drive-through? Or is it possible, let's say it ends up being a drive-through, which is probably, we don't know. Is it possible to have one session for 2 ballots? Does that make sense? So
I think there are a lot of unknowns still, Norm, about like
Yeah,
we'll have
I'm just-
to just keep our eye on this as we go along, because rules changed up to a week before our town meeting. So we'll have to see if there are more emergency orders, executive orders, whatever comes out. But I assume at this point we're going by the original RSA, and there are certain dates that we have to abide by for
Okay.
all of that. But I don't think that, well, I'll leave it there, yeah, because I
Okay,
can't predict the
perfect.
future.
That's clear. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The one thing I would add is, are there additional ways that we can publicize the budget committee meetings and the school meetings and the town meetings when we're discussing budget, so that we can get more public input and people can understand the issues that we're facing and how we're trying to resolve them. I know, say, Sue Covert has been publicizing the times for budget committee meetings, and I think that's great. And if there are ways to expand upon that.
The other thing I would say, as someone who was outside for all of the drive-through voting in March is a heck of a lot different than drive-through voting in May and June and August. And so the contingency planning is going to be critical, I think. And if we think we're going to do drive-through, we might be better to push both of these dates off into April as soon as we can. Because, you know, March is just a cold month.
Yeah, as you
Same
were
thing,
saying, I was
Jeff.
thinking that same thing as well, that your March is tough. And then I was also just thinking, just looking at the proposed dates, I mean, it's only a week apart, and I don't remember the RSA, but I think there's like they require 2 or 3 Zoom sessions. And so I'm just thinking, if I'm a voter in town, I'm going to have, 6 Zoom meetings to get my information, as well as a Saturday voting. That feels like a lot to have sort of back to back. And so I don't know what the solution is. It could be moving things around till it's later, but in some ways, if there's a way to space those meetings, which may not feel great, but it also may help, because there's just a lot of Zoom time and expectations on voters to pay it, to go to all those. It's not just one meeting, it's a series of them.
Well, and I wonder too, if we're early enough, if, maybe this is something that NHMA has some input on, and if we're early enough that as a municipality, we can almost affect what possibly the new guidelines would be for, or new regulations would be, if we were still in this remote world in the spring, that if we could, again, like proactively suggest, like, here's a better way that we think we shouldn't have to have 3, Zoom meetings for each meeting. I don't know if there's a way that we can maybe have some influence over what may happen.
And Neil or Steve, and I should know all this and I don't. I know there's some statutory deadlines by which, we have to have certain things decided. And so, like, how far can we?
And the biggest one, Jim, is the April 15th requirement to issue teachers' contracts. We had to go through last year, if you remember, with the, do you contingency rift, do you anticipatory, do you remember all those conversations that we had? That's the first big deadline, of course, and then we have the June 1st, which is support staff. Those are our requirements that we manage through, but to keep those in mind, you're right, we can push it out, but as long as the board has enough time to decide on staffing, that's the piece, the April 15th requirement, because that was not waived last year.
So what's the best way, I guess, for our 2 boards to sort of, I guess, move on from here on October 26th. It doesn't feel like something we can let linger for too long, but it also feels like it may be worth some additional exploring about what's sort of possible and how I'm just trying to think what's the right way to kind of do that over the next, couple weeks.
Yeah, because I like Norm's idea of potentially consolidating. It feels like we either need to like condense or get more space, to your point, Jim. So, I mean, that might be unanswerable. I don't know, even by outside counsel, but I guess we could possibly look into that to begin. And if it looks like at this point, without legislative intervention or other sort of emergency guidance, that a single day for both the town and the school is not possible, then we can put that aside and move on to trying to space these so they make sense for everybody.
Do we want to, and because I'm also thinking about the budget committee, because they also, I think at their last meeting, they put forward a schedule that I think reflects sort of these dates, at least in sort of a ballpark way. I'm wondering if maybe we want to, I don't know, ask a couple of members or one member from each of our boards and maybe put our heads together on this as just one way. And then they can go back to, whatever solutions they come up with, go back to each of our respective boards and discuss it. That might be one way to, so we're not asking Neil and Steve to do it all or not just sort of independently doing it, but if maybe just a small group.
It sounded like you volunteered Norm and myself as respective representatives on the budget committee.
I was going to volunteer Seth because he's not here, but that's an even better idea, Ken.
Sure, if Norm's willing, we can talk because I think we may be coming from somewhat differing viewpoints. I'm thinking that it does not make sense to ask people to be aware of and to vote on both budgets at the same time. I think it's too much information. But yeah, Norm, and I see you shaking your head, if you're willing,
Yeah, sure.
Discuss it.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll see you at the farmer's market.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
I would just suggest talking as well with our moderators at the same time, and possibly looping in a budget committee person as well, just so that all the dates because there's, even if we, there are just a lot of dates to keep in mind.
Okay.
You can add the supervisors of the checklist as well.
Definitely supervisors.
Yeah.
Yes, my apologies.
Certainly on election day, maybe we can catch them each for 30 seconds.
Maybe this is a Neil and Steve question. Like when would you guys feel good about having this decision made? I assume today, but
it sounds like it's going to be pushing it out as opposed to contracting it. So I think, as long as it's going further out, we're preparing for the budget committee calendar of the second meeting in January. So, and as long as it doesn't come back on this side of that, we'll be okay. But I think, working with the moderators in peace, I think it's going to be a little bit of a process, but I don't think it's going to be pushed out. So I think we'll be okay.
Our dates aren't going to change because the first part of town meeting is the voting by ballot, and that is set by statute. So that will not change. So that second Wednesday in February, when the budget committee has set their hearing, is really, they either need to have it that night or the next night is the snow night. That's their deadline. So those dates aren't going to change. Unless statute changes, but I would not anticipate that. Because the SB2 towns especially are all set on that anyways. So I don't think, it would seem unlikely that the legislature would change those dates.
I'm just looking at the schedule. So it's that town and school ballot voting day is March 9th.
Correct.
And then, so there's working backwards from that, there are dates that are certain.
Right.
And I need to notify the budget committee about the change in the calendar. I was informed by the board last meeting that we will not be able to meet the deadline that's on that calendar. Wasn't it, what date was it, Steve? I forget which one it was. It was,
I think we
They
want
want
the second Wednesday in January as opposed to the first, I think.
yeah, we wouldn't have enough information in order to present an accurate budget to the budget committee. So I need to let Mr. Zankel know when I see him next time for email.
And that is really a budget committee issue based on what Neil had said about when the budget committee has to complete its work.
Mhm.
So Neil, just really quickly, we have the set dates for the budget committee, and then we have our set March 9th, right? Tuesday, March 9th for voting by ballot. And then what are the restrictions? I can't remember. I know we discussed this a lot last year and the year before about like, we're supposed to hold the second part within a certain amount of time.
I can't remember. I'm not sure that there is. I think the moderator has some.
Huh,
So
okay.
certainly the moderator can change that. My recollection too is the school district is supposed to meet by the end of March. But I would want to look at all
Yeah,
those
right.
all those things again to see if there's specific
James-
times that the meetings have to be scheduled by, even if they're postponed.
James
Yeah.
got pretty good at that last spring.
And HB 1129, which is what we used last year, is in effect in 2021. It sunsets after that, but it is in effect. But that could change with the legislature too.
Mhm.
I do think, I think it was Anna who mentioned, but bringing the moderators in, I think is probably a really good first step. Because they, at the end of the day, they're gonna have to run or help with those Zoom meetings. And, you know, so I think having them part of the initial conversation on setting the dates is probably really good. So for Ken and Norm, that'd be really helpful.
I hear you.
Got it. We'll talk, Ken.
Okay, so we have some work to do on this. Are we good to move on from the dates issue? Okay. Next up, we have town initiatives, economic development update. And I think Neil was going to touch on this, and Stephen also kindly offered to give an update since he's quite involved with the Economic Development Committee, as is Anna.
Neil, do you want me to go first?
Yes, I thought you were doing this.
Sorry, I didn't know if you had anything
so-
to kick off. But
So
go
please,
ahead, Steve.
so please do.
First of all, I want to note that we don't have earphones, and all the school board has earphones. And I don't know why that is, but it's just an observation.
Their meetings go later and they don't want to keep their kids up.
That's a good
Or
answer,
something.
actually. Yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, the Economic Development Committee, I mean, I think the biggest things to just let people in on, obviously the zoning changes that were put forth at the 2020 meeting were passed. Again, those focused on the Harts Corner area, which is over near Dunkin' Donuts, and then the former bioenergy site also in West Hopkinton. And the idea there was to kind of open up some development possibilities to more dense multi-unit residential development and other types of non-residential development, because we're trying to promote Hopkinton as a location for non-residential development and also a little more diversity in the type of housing that we have here in town. So that could be, more affordable housing. It could also be more starter homes. So that's kind of our goal. In addition to the zoning changes that were passed, the other big news is that we have recently contracted with Central New Hampshire Planning to hire their staff, in particular Matt Monahan, to come on board and serve in our new Economic Development Director position. That's a part-time position. It's partly funded by a line item in the operating budget, and it's also going to come from some of the TIF district funding. And we're very excited about that. Central New Hampshire Planning is an organization that the town deals with quite a bit. We're very familiar with them. They are very familiar with us. The staff there is doing similar duties in surrounding towns, and so they are well qualified to do that and help us. And we just want the economic development, kind of goals to be a little more professionalized. The Economic Development Committee works very hard, and I'm so grateful for all the work that they do. But there's only so much that we can do. We're volunteers. We're not necessarily qualified, maybe aside from Anna, but to really speak on some of these issues. And so we need this help, and we are really, really grateful that the voters are going to give us the chance to do that. So Matt, only like the paperwork, the ink on the paper dried, within the last week, I think. So Matt, his first meeting with the Economic Development Committee is actually tomorrow evening. And so we're going to be able to sit down with him and kind of prioritize what we would like to see him do. And then at whenever town meeting 2021 is, we're going to reassess that position. As I said, it's part-time right now. The hope is that either in 2021 or some other year, maybe it will require more hours and it will grow. But that depends on, how things go from here until then. The other thing I'll mention is I will call out Anna and Jeff. There is a continuing process going on, not necessarily under the Economic Development Committee. Anna and Jeff are on the planning board or are working with the planning board and the town planner, Karen Robertson, to continue looking at our zoning ordinance and to try to identify areas that maybe could use some clarity, or to identify just barriers to development, things that maybe at the time seemed like a good idea, but now we don't really think we need to have those sorts of parameters in place anymore. So that is an ongoing process. And I anticipate that there may be further proposals to tweak the zoning ordinance in the future. And so I'll look at Anna and Jeff and see if there's anything else maybe that they want to mention to this group that I left out, but that's kind of where we sit right now.
I think you did a great job on all of that. I think the other thing I would just mention is that our master plan's in the process of being rewritten for Hopkinton, which is another really, really important economic development tool, a blueprint of sorts, a guiding document for what we want our town to look like. And so I just urge folks to keep their eyes out for opportunities to get involved in helping with that update.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, Neil, I don't know if you wanted to add anything beyond what I was just saying.
No, I think you covered it all.
Okay.
Do we have Seth now? Oh yeah, there's Seth. Okay, thank you guys for that update on EDC. Next we have school district initiatives, superintendent search, and learning in a pandemic.
Seth is just in time.
I know. I was going to say that. What great timing, Seth. So I'll kick it off and then hand it over to Seth. But so at the end of the school year, it was made public that Steve Chamberlain is going to step down as our superintendent. And so first, I just want to recognize Steve for just his tremendous years of service to Hopkinton, both as a building principal and as our education leader as superintendent. We're sad to see Steve go. And 2020 has been a challenging year in the pandemic, and Steve has stepped up incredibly and continues to do an amazing job for us. We are looking and have started a superintendent search. The board asked Seth Aframe and Rob Nato to be the board reps sort of leading our search. And that has been going on now for a couple of months. And so Seth, it was perfect timing. You came right at the right time. So I'm going to hand it over to you to talk a little bit about the search process and what we're doing.
Sure, great. Thank you, Jim. I'm glad I came at the right time. So first, I agree with everything that Jim said about Steve. It's been great to get to know him this year and to have the chance to work with him. As far as the search goes, we made the decision from the beginning, after looking at some data, that it's very clear that you need to hire sort of an outside consulting firm to do this the right way. And so we did that. We put out a request for proposals to several firms. We ended up hiring a firm called Hazard Young. That's a national firm that specializes in superintendent searches. I have been very impressed with the team that they have given to us to help run the search. They take a very active approach and help us really both launch the search both regionally but also nationally. I was talking to the head of our group today, and she was and he talked about an issue, and she was just finishing up doing a screening interview for someone from Texas. So we're not just limiting ourselves to people right around here, although we expect we will get many candidates who are from right around here. The way we structured this, we did, as many of you know, because you participated, we did begin with community outreach by having a whole series of meetings with different stakeholders in the community. The goal to be to gather information about where we are, where we think we do well, what we think the areas of growth are, what we think the problems, areas that we have long-term, maybe structural concerns, all sorts of different things, gathering as much feedback as possible from as many quarters as possible. The consulting team takes that information and created both a profile of us and then a leadership profile of what we think our next superintendent should be, that matches up with those things that were discovered through all of the community outreach. So that process has actually been concluded. We are now in the period where the consultants are finding us a slate probably of 10 to 12, I'll call them semifinalists. And we have put together a screening committee that represents, again, many quarters of our community: teachers, administrators, school board members, Sabrina representing the select board, as well as parents, to try to narrow that pool down to 4 or 5 people who will be the finalists. Those finalists will then come to the district, be interviewed by the board, and hopefully that process will end and we will have an announcement of a new superintendent right around March, right around the beginning of March, with the hope or the understanding that person would be starting at the appropriate time to be up and running by next beginning of next school year. So right now the screening committee will have its meeting to winnow down the semifinalists to what I'll call the finalists December 8th. And then after that, it looks like we will interview the finalists February 18th. And then there's sort of the contract negotiation point, and then we will have a new superintendent. So that is the plan.
Thanks, Seth. I don't know, Rob, if you've been heavily involved in the process. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I think Seth hit all the major points and topics, and just thank everybody who's participated so far. Things are moving along very well.
And if there's no questions or additional comments, but I'm not sure. Steve, did you have something in mind specifically on learning in a pandemic?
Well, just to no surprise, that's one of the largest initiatives that we're undertaking as we speak. Just a couple of things. It's significant time to negotiate a memo of agreement regarding health and safety and working conditions with our associations, trying to balance safety and learning, trying to be, as Jim calls it, adaptive in our leadership, and we're trying to make this work. But I think it really is the biggest initiative we have going right now is learning under a pandemic and trying to figure it out and adjust. That's all.
I just want to take a second to thank Steve for giving me an opportunity to attend the high school last week. I was able to experience how it was with our teachers teaching from home, teaching in person to students at home and in the classroom. And then I attended as a student virtually. And I just want to say thank you to Steve for taking the time, and Rebecca and Teacher June for letting me go to this and really understand the pros and cons of doing it, because it really helped me as a board member understand some of how our students are experiencing online learning and what our teachers are dealing with in the classroom. So thank you, Steve, for lunch too. It was a great day to experience it. Thank you.
I mean, you did really well at Jeopardy too, so good job.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'm going to add, and I think we started off sort of the impacts on COVID and operations. And, at least in the conversations that we've been having at the board level, it's a real balancing act between, education delivery and sort of the learning in the pandemic. And then on the other side, it's, I guess I would call it student safety, but it's beyond that. It's student safety, it's teacher and staff safety. And then, then it's all of our safety. It's the community safety. And, right now, I think in Hopkinton, the schools our sports are probably one of the only areas in town where we're having, that many people together in one facility. And so I know as we've been making decisions, the community impact of those decisions has also weighed on our minds as a board, in addition to the education needs of our students and the safety needs of our staff. And so, we see this, I think, as it's an all-town effort. It's not just a school district sort of effort, but what happens in the school is going to have ramifications for all of us in the community. And so, I just wanted to state that because I think sometimes people separate the school district operations and what happens in the school from sort of the overall impact it may have in the community. And I think the pandemic has shown me anyway that, what's going on in the schools, the health and safety of our students and staff, it really is a community-wide health and safety impacts. And so, so a lot of decisions that we've been making, like around mask wearing, the sanitation, is for the protection of our students, but I think we're seeing it as a larger community protection. And so if you've attended or zoomed into one of our meetings, Steve has put together a decision matrix around, how many cases that we have in school, how many cases are in the community, how many cases are in the district. And that sort of information is helping guide, how we react to keeping schools open and how large of a risk there is, not just in the school community, but the overall Hopkinton community of transmission. And so anyway, I just wanted to make sure that was referenced because I do think it's important. And I do think as a district, we're taking that, responsibility to, I think to operate our schools in a very safe way, the safest way that we can do it under the circumstances, as well as trying to meet those education needs of our students. And it's a challenging balancing act. And I guess I would invite, if you guys think we're getting it wrong, you know, because it isn't just a district, it's wider. I would just encourage you to reach out and have a conversation with one of our members or with Steve. I think that would be helpful.
I was actually going to say how much I appreciate how adherent to the regulations you all have been. I know that these are really, really difficult choices. I'll echo Ken's sentiment that I'm glad I'm on the select board, not the school board. But I know these are really, really difficult calls to have to make, and they're ones that you have to make. There's not a ton of wiggle room or gray area in the DHHS protocols. And I just appreciate that you all are taking this incredibly seriously and doing all of the right things. I'm heartened to hear and to know that, you know, sort of globally research is coming forth saying that schools are not the places necessarily where COVID is spreading. And I think that's because of folks like you who are doing the right things and taking the right steps. When cases are identified, contact tracing occurs, you know, folks are quarantining, schools are going remote when they need to. And I think that hopefully is happening around the country and around the world, at least around the state. I think the harder thing is outside of school in some ways, that there's so much less control. So maybe I'll now lament that I am on the select board, that it's harder to be outside of the school and not have as much guidance, maybe in making decisions, which, you know, we had a lot of discussion about a mask ordinance in town and went the route of a more, I forget what we called it, but we suggest masks.
A resolution.
Resolution, thank you. And hope that folks are adhering to that because the spread is happening in restaurants and bars and outside of schools. And it's really hard, I think, when schools are open, the message is, great, everything should be open. And that would be nice. But if we're going to have our schools open, then we need to be prepared to take precautions in every other area. So that's the trade-off that we're faced with. So if we want to keep our schools open as they are, or even open to a greater degree, then we have to make that trade-off and take our precautions everywhere else we go.
I just want to say one thing, you know, to add on to that, you know, this select board has done its choices that it had to do for the community. You know, Halloween, you guys strongly recommended not trick or treat, and you guys couldn't cancel or anything, but that is a step of sending a message to the community that we have to be safe. And, you know, I'm someone who lives in a very busy neighborhood. You know, a lot of people do not want trick or treating here at all. And you got to take a pass this year. You know, if you don't have to travel, don't travel. And we all work together as a community, you know, to keep our businesses open, keep our schools open, and really just focus on staying safe and wearing a mask. The bottom line is, whatever choice we make, someone will have a problem with it and they won't be happy. And that's something we just have to live with as elected officials. And we all do our best to, you know, service this wonderful town.
Following up on Norm's comment about traveling, I was just curious if you've had any discussions yet about when coming back from Thanksgiving vacation.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So yeah, we're in the middle of that. So we've had some discussions, and we're set on Thursday. We're going to be meeting, and that will be part of our meeting discussion. You know, we've been an ongoing discussion has been around scheduling. You know, I think as Steve said when we kicked off, you know, we're in a hybrid model, and we're learning as we go. And I know there's been some requests for adjustments to schedule, and so we've had a groups meeting to look at, you know, how we're providing education now, what some alternative schedules could look like in order to meet the education needs of kids, and also meet the real needs that parents have as well for students in school. And then there is guidance about quarantine if you're traveling outside in New England, and with the holidays come up, that's a concern both for I would say safety, obviously of everybody traveling outside the district. But we also know, like, one of our biggest challenges is staffing, because if you don't have enough teachers or staff in school, it's hard to run classes and to keep kids safe. And so what you saw at Harold Martin School a couple of weeks ago, well, also the high school when we closed, we didn't have enough staff in order to operate school safely. And so that's a concern as well, because if you're supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks and we have a certain number of staff who travel, how to safely run school facilities is challenging. So we've done surveys of parents and faculty, so we can get because we want to give everybody notice of what our plan is moving into the holiday season. So that was a really long answer to your good question, Ken, but that's definitely been on the mind, I know, of Steve and his team, and the board's going to have a longer discussion on it on Thursday about what the plan is moving forward.
Thank you.
Anything else on pandemic learning? All right, so next item, we've got budget. So school district drivers and town drivers for, we have FY22 here, budget.
If Rob wants to just talk about the budget drivers, so that he's talked about the finance committee.
Yeah, I was going to invite him to do that. Start with that.
Sure. So, thus far the process is just beginning, and Steve has been working through the department heads and the principals as he starts to build his superintendent budget. And essentially, in our discussions at the finance committee was that we were looking at contractual obligations in places where we know there's going to be inflationary pressure, and that everything else in the budget, the goal is flat. But we know that there are inflationary pressures with healthcare I think that the GMR is about 6%, Steve. And we also know that we have some increases to our share, well, all of the share to the New Hampshire Retirement Program. That's going up another 2%. And those costs are borne completely by the school district. Teachers contribute to that, but the state has offloaded that as well. So those are our two very, very big items. When I think about the budget, I really think about it in three parts. I think of the pre-obligation of the bond, which is kind of like going Christmas shopping in November, and now it's January and it's time to pay for it. So there shouldn't be a big surprise there, but everybody will feel like it's a big surprise. And then there are those inflationary drivers that are there. So it's going to be difficult, but I'm kind of hoping that we don't get into the scenario we got into last year where we look to reduce educational offerings and programs because of inflationary pressure. That carrot and stick approach will not do us well for very long. And I think we're going to see, this is just me speaking and not the board, but we're going to have two years where we've got some pretty significant pressures, and then things will level out again. When I look at the long-term view of not the tax rate, but tax bill over a period of 15 years, you're looking at about a 3% or so increase, which is fairly good. So we've got to take the highs and lows out, but unfortunately we're going to be in for a couple of highs here. That's my guessing anyway. Steve, you want to add on to that at all, or?
No, I think you did great. The only thing that we're also looking at is just our average daily membership regarding student enrollment and how that impacts adequacy. There is some possible good news there, and looking at, because of so many districts have been impacted by the homeschool numbers, that they're looking at last year's ADM to do adequacy again, which would stabilize that. And that's some good news there. There is a lot of talk about stabilizing the adequacy based on enrollment, which we think is a good thing. But I think Robbie did a great job. He hit all the high points, so thank you.
Just the other, just as it relates to budget, I think you'll also see some more information coming from us in terms of how the numbers are presented. You'll see the usual things from the district-wide perspective, but you'll also see a school by school articulation of costs. And then you'll also see a more programmatic. So what does it cost to run the math department 6 through 12, so on and so forth. So that'll be some new things that we're doing that hopefully will help answer folks' questions as we move on down the road. Happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
And the only other additional item I would just add, and I think everybody knows that at our first vote, which I forget even when our first vote was, but when our first drive-by vote, the teacher's contract did not pass, and so our assumption is there'll be another contract coming forward for vote, and so that, whether or not that's a driver or not, but that's just another added piece into our budget that we're going to be working on and thinking about as we move through the budget calendar.
Thanks for that. So for the town, Neil or Ken?
I think Neil is, at this point is totally on top of it, and I'm not, so I defer to Neil.
Sure. You'll hear a repeat of what you kind of just heard on some of these expenses, but revenue, we're probably looking at lost revenue from the state. We don't know, but room and meals and highway block grant, I'm assuming a 25% decrease in those, which is like 125,000 for us. We only have one election in 2021, so that saves some money. That's a good thing. That saves some gray hair too. Health insurance is the same, 6%. New Hampshire retirement, we see that almost 3% for most of the employees, but firefighters are going from paying a little over 30% to paying basically 33% of their salaries in retirement. Police are going from about 28.5% to almost 34%. So those are huge increases in our budget that we have no control over. When I first started doing this, the state paid 45% of those police and fire costs, just like they did for the teachers. And I always like to remind people that we do not have a choice, that teachers and police and firefighters have to be in New Hampshire retirement. It's always interesting when you look at the small towns without full-time firefighters, for example, and you'll see that there are 3 police officers, the retirement costs much more than their whole other staff put together. But there really aren't options there. Stephen already mentioned that the part-time economic development director, that was funded, it was originally funded from July to the end of the year, and then that was adjusted to October to the end of the year. And so if a full year is put in, that would be there. And we're in the processing, the road bond with a very low interest rate won't affect a lot next year. That will actually be the year after mostly, but at the same time, we're refinancing the previous road bond and the fire station. So there may be some trying to level everything out, because there may be some years that don't have payments, but long-term, that should lower the overall cost substantially. Other than that, everything's pretty much status quo.
I'll just add, because we've gotten questions about what's happening with the solar array at the transfer station, and believe sometime in the next, hopefully, week or so, Stephen Neal and I will be meeting with our counterparts in Webster and the company. And as far as I understand at this point, they're, proceeding as expected.
Ken,
Great.
so we've we've been approached over the summer by some students who've been advocating for the district to I don't, switch isn't the right word, but to become 100% renewable over time. And I'm just wondering in your conversations with the developer if there's been a conversation. I know it'd be hard, but to do some sort of power purchase agreement, like carving off some of that energy for an agreement with the town that could include the district. I don't know if you guys have broached that with them at all in the past, and if that's even an option. I know it's hard at this point because they don't have a project that's not built yet. But I'm just sort of curious if that's been part of your conversation.
Okay. Well, we haven't had a conversation, real conversation, probably a year, but I believe in the original discussions, there was sort of a carve out that was a possibility. And I just thought of one other thing, thinking of solar arrays. Neil and I have been bouncing around the idea of looking into whether it would be cost effective for the town to buy out Revision Energy with regards to the solar array on the fire station, which we could not physically do for almost 2 years, but we'd have to start putting money aside if we thought that was a cost effective way to go.
So we're going to get we've decided that we have an existing committee that exists in the high school that we're going to work with them on sort of this idea around getting to a certain renewable target by a date. And so I might be back in touch with one of you guys sooner than later, just maybe to see if we can have a conversation with the company. Some of it obviously depends on our load and how much we use and how cost effective it might be, but I think that might be one way that we could get to, those targets, renewable targets earlier, and without having to construct new panels if we already have some going in town. That this could be a good win-win for everybody if we can make it work.
Okay, we'll make sure when we discuss it with the town, with the company, that stays on the table.
Thank you.
I also am wondering about the school's trash and recycling contract, and if the town and the school, if there are, what the relationship is, and if there are economies of scale to be had there too, because the town's considering, if my memory serves right, we did agree that we would consider looking at our contract again. So what are there areas? I know it's not a giant pot of, part of the budget, but if there are overlaps that we can take advantage of there.
Happy to talk with Neil about it and bring the contracts and talk more about it. I think anytime we can gain economy of scale, and I'm with you, I think that'd be a great idea.
Great.
Put it on my list.
Anything else on budgets? All right.
Good luck, I guess. I think it's gonna be a challenging year, I think, on both sides. So.
So next we have next meeting date.
That's just to put on there if there is an opportunity. We do have some open questions about the school district meeting dates, so maybe we can, after Norm and Ken or Neil and I get together, we can talk about if we need to come back together the next month or so. We only once in all our time, and we met, I think, a second time, and that was in the spring because of some budget stuff. But I think the election has some ideas that we could get everybody back together again.
Yeah, that sounds good. So that brings us to the second public comment. So people can raise their hands or hit, I don't think we have anyone on the phone, but *9 for anyone on the phone.
You guys got it easy.
You guys have a whole meeting ahead, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
All right. So, Neil, just a logistical question. I assume we'll just stay on this, roll into our meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that, I guess no one wants to comment. So thank you to everyone who joined us, and that brings us to adjournment.
Thanks, everybody.
you
I
all.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you all.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thanks, school board.
Bye.
Good to
Thanks,
see you.
school board.
Such a,
Are we
such
gonna
a
be-
short meeting.
Demoted, or should we just leave? Serious
I'm gonna
question.
demote you.
If you prefer to be demoted, we can do that if you're not leaving.
I might just leave.
Myself.
You don't want to stay for our
thank you.
meeting?
At all.
No.
See you guys. Be safe. Bye.
Brini, are you going to read the right to know thing again?
Do you, so are we like,
Do we have to?
I don't know. I hope
I
not.
don't think
Yeah.
so. Because it's still a continuation. Our
yeah,
agenda
because
was
like we
listed.
declared our meeting, then we did the joint piece, and now we're rolling into our.
Works for me.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you everybody for that. So we can start with points of pride.
Sure. I have a picture that if I can share my screen.
Photo journal points of pride.
Here's
That's scary. Oh.
Here's one. This is drawings that have been put up that were actually at the Twin Villages Art and are two villages, sorry, and are here. And let me show you the other one. So, and I just want to thank Alyssa McCann who put this together and brought this here. This is from the display that featured the adult and their child, and it's really great. And I think it's really added a lot to what used to be our meeting room. Right now is Fill Out Your Ballot Central. So I just wanted to highlight her and thank her for that work and for putting these up and doing and sharing with us a display that was there. And I should highlight that all the departments' budgets are in. I start meeting with them tomorrow, so I just want to thank them for getting that done. And it's a hard year all the way around. So lots of questions with not a lot of answers. So.
Fun. I love the art. Thanks for showing us that.
I like how you mix the art with the not very encouraging budget.
I walk out every 10 minutes and look at it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's cool.
Thank you, Neil. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
Actually, Norm touched on this at the prior meeting. Just wanted to thank Paula and the Recreation Committee for the idea of the scarecrow contest in town. I thought it was a lot of very well done scarecrows.
That's great. All right. We can move on to administrative. We have approval of the consent agenda first.
Okay, I'll move we approve the consent agenda of October 26, 2020.
And that I be approved to sign?
And Jeff would be approved to sign this time. Thank you, Jeff.
Excellent.
Second.
Great. Thank you. Sabrina's yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes,
Thank you, Jeff, for signing.
no problem.
Next, we have approval of the public meeting minutes of October 13th, 2020.
So moved.
Second,
All right, thank you. Sabrina's yes. Anna,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Jeff.
yes,
All right, thank you. We have no appointments. And that brings us to old business. Updates on the Slusser Center opening and then road speeds and use.
Sure, my favorite topics these days. So just an update on the Slusher Center. We've started looking at how to best open. One of the things Paula did was call all the other senior centers, and just to note, like Manchester's closed, Hudson's closed, Henniker is doing a few programs outside. Salem is closed. Keene is doing virtual classes. Their building's closed. Tilton allows 10 people in at a time. Nashua is doing 2 to 3 classes a week. Plymouth is closed, doing drive-through lunches, which we are doing. Claremont has no classes, but they're allowing meetings in their building. Bradford, they're talking about doing a coffee time to get people together, but with no coffee. So, so New London has some classes. They're not doing socializing, and they're doing contact tracing forms. Actually, since we met at that point, Good Life in Concord was doing some. They closed this past week, given that Merrimack County hit red. So they have closed right now.
They're still doing Zoom meetings and classes.
They're doing Zoom, but their building's closed. That's right. And Paula contacted the instructors, and a few were okay with starting. Most aren't ready yet to offer classes. So we're trying to put together a 3-phase opening. And phase 1 would be the first one. We're probably looking at this point, we're thinking the first of the year, given that we just hit red. There wouldn't be meetings in the building. There'd be limited capacity and short-term visits. We looked at the rooms and measured the rooms, and 10 feet people fit socially distanced, and that works. Following what other places are doing, waiting cars until it's time, limited the time there. And we were talking an hour and a half, which would allow setup time and then hour-long programs. We would have people do health questions and temperature checks, increased cleaning, of course, groups taking on the responsibility for cleaning surfaces before and after. And largely we're working on how to best do reservations. We think it has to be done probably just calling in and somebody taking them, given the population and computer access. And we're trying to put together the parameters for what phase 2 and 3, what would trigger those to open things further up. So that's kind of where we're at, and happy to take any input and go from there. And if there's no input, we'll keep moving forward.
Thanks.
Well, I guess, Neil, I'd really like to see them host some kind of a Zoom. Someone mentioned coffee without the coffee. You know, if people could get on Zoom just to talk to other people. I mean, I know a couple of seniors who live alone, and they are absolutely miserable because they can't talk to anyone. And, you know, I mean, I know that Rotary does it, you know, 25 or 30 people on the meeting at a time. And yeah, I mean, someone's got to moderate it. Somebody's got to, you know, sort of keep order so that people can have a good experience. But it's something that we really need to consider. I mean, we haven't done anything for these people for 7 months. We just started drive-through lunches, and, you know, I mean, Dimitri was doing them for 4 months before we could figure out how to do it. I just don't think we're doing enough.
I think we're happy to look at Zoom. That makes sense. The Senior Rec Council didn't think people would use it, but you won't know that until you try it.
And it doesn't cost us anything. I mean,
Right.
And there may have to be sort of, learning sessions. Somebody may have to go in person for, to help. I mean, I think it's, if there are folks who don't have currently the capability or the knowledge to get on Zoom, there may have to be some additional learning, which maybe that's something that the Hopkinton Helps could be part of. If you pair up with someone and mask up and get all your PPE on and go help somebody set up their computer. I don't know how that could work, but I don't know. I just think it's not as easy as like, hey, everyone, join the Zoom. Like there may be some setup that needs to happen.
And a lot of our people don't have computer access, we found. So, but maybe we should be looking at something to help with that too. I'll take that back. I don't see why that can't be done right away.
All right, thanks, Neil. So road speeds.
Sure. So we've been talking about roads, and it's always the ongoing thing. So Sugar Hill, we kind of reviewed, and we're probably looking for input, that the correct speed limit signs are there and in the right places. The road's in good shape. Sending trucks out Stumpfield does not seem to make sense in so many ways. That road is narrow, as well as turning onto 202. But we intend to do the slow down recreation area signs. So that sort of is what we think can happen there, unless there are other things you would like done.
Neil, what about local traffic? And I guess that's more for the College Hill Road than the Stumpfield.
It is, and my reading of the local traffic in the hard road to travel is that's not really an option, because it violates equal protection under, I'm not arguing this with you, but that local traffic, we could limit the weight, but can you limit a road to just local traffic? It's not really, it's hard to enforce, but my reading of it was that you couldn't even do that.
I mean, I don't want to give legal advice to the board, but I wonder if this may be something that NHMA, we get some feedback from them on, just because I know from, and Anna probably as well, there's some residents in that College Hill, Hatfield area that are pretty concerned, and I don't know if putting up the 30-mile-an-hour signs is going to make much of a dent in the volume of traffic. And so I think I'd like to see us at least, ask a couple more questions of either our council or NHMA, and just see if there's anything else we can do other than that.
Sure, and that area is next on the list. So let me just, and we'll keep working with Henniker to get the GPS changed. We thought we had changed some of that, but I asked my iPhone to give me directions to Pat's Peak from here, and it took me right down Hatfield and College Hill. So that is back to going that way. So we'll continue to work on that. The local traffic can do. Speed limit signs are there. The only place that possibly one could be added is if you come out of College Hill, between College Hill headed further out on Hatfield. There's not one in that section. So one could go there. And the other thing is working with the local businesses, specifically one business, to try to get better directional signs. Now, all of their directions do not go that way. They use 114 and 202, so they're certainly not sending people that way. But we're trying to see if there's signage we could put to encourage that. If we could get the GPS changed, I think that would be the big thing, because everybody uses that now, and that's what sends everybody that way. Possibly limiting it to local traffic on the GPS would prevent it from using that. So that's kind of where we've gotten, but certainly open to other suggestions.
I'm wondering how well or frequently we're employing our speed trap sign, like the, your speed is in both of those areas. If we're, I know the part of the concern of the Sugar Hill is the trucks, right? Is that it's being used as a through trucking route. So I know we kind of jumped from Sugar Hill to College Hill, but on the Sugar Hill one, is it possible are weight limits feasible on that, or does that just shunt traffic to Stump Field, which is not a good option?
Right. If you were doing weight limits, you'd probably have to set it at the beginning at 77.
Right.
And where would need to do that too?
Okay.
So if that's something you want to pursue, we could pursue with them setting that, which would push trucks, I would guess, up to Jewett Road and
yeah, I was trying to visualize where they possibly would go. But that's, yeah.
Well, it's the cut across to 89. And I think the looking at the map, it seems to me Jewett Road would be the way they would go if they didn't go that way.
And then about the question about our like speed trap, I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, the speed trailer gets moved around town. So it is always somewhere.
Okay.
It was out here not too long ago,
yeah,
depending on time of year, and I'm sure Hatfield and College Hill, as the weather gets colder and the snow flies, it will go out there.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, is how usable is it in the winter, because it's solar powered, right?
It's either solar or that might be battery. I'm not sure how that works. I do know that quite a few towns have put in your speed is, and it says that on the speed limit sign, which makes people aware, at least. Those are about $5,000 a piece. They're solar.
I had actually looked into that too on my own. I was like, I wonder if we could install one of those signs, and they are expensive, but I find them effective.
Because I admit I do too, because it makes you aware.
And they flash when you're going, 5 miles or 10 miles above, or, whatever. I wonder if there's any, again, sort of way can private donations or business contributions, or, is there some way that we can provide that, but have it not come out of our DPW budget? I don't know. It may be something that the neighbors are willing to, help defray the cost of, if it's that important.
And that may help. So
how could, what's the best way to pursue something like that?
Probably, if people know the neighbors, probably direct discussion would be a good way.
Okay.
I would think.
Maybe Stephen and I, as the closest residents to that area, can just follow up with folks in the neighborhood and see if it's something that is even remotely on their radar.
Yeah, I've got some email addresses of people, and you probably do as well, Anna. So maybe we can put those lists together and see if there's any interest.
I'll talk to some of the Sugar Hill people because I've had conversations with them on several occasions. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's easier to share one of those with those two kind of streets.
Well, that would be a fixed sign, right? That would be a pole in the ground
right.
with
Right.
They do have movable ones.
Mm-hmm.
Are close to the same cost. And I think they are battery powered, so they would have to be charged because they don't have the solar. The solar ones are more permanent.
Okay.
Neil, one of the other comments we'd heard on Sugar Hill was a suggestion of striping. Did that come up?
Our policy has been not to stripe roads except in very rare occasions. Striping probably would be a traffic calmer if the roads appear more narrow. That would have budget implications. There was a time quite a while ago when we did a lot more striping, and that was taken out and changed. I know we do stripe at the end of Gould Hill, for example, the corner and through there.
Neil, just the cost to stripe? I mean, how significant of a budget item is it?
I don't remember. It was quite a while ago. But we could certainly look at the cost of that.
And can you also ask about what are they called, speed tables?
Yeah, I was thinking speed tables or even rumble strips.
Right.
Sort of horizontal rumble strip. So I think was the main area of concern around Drew Lake, or was it elsewhere? Do you recall?
I understood it to be around Drew Lake, but that's my memory.
I think it's also past people's houses and some of the.
Yeah.
I think Drew Lake was.
I think we talked about this at some point because I know plowing becomes a real problem with any sort of speed bump or speed table.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, I know in general, our highway department's not a fan of speed bumps and speed tables, but I don't know about like rumble strips. They're obviously not effective in the winter when they're, full of ice or whatever, but I don't know if that's something that we've ever done or thought about.
It's a hazard when they're full of ice and they're noisy as hell when they're not full of ice.
It would be, it would not be a linear in line with the road. It would be a horizontal perpendicular cross. So you cross it once.
And it's still noisy.
Okay. It's like what at exit 5, there's those strips as you get off 89 exit 5, just to remind you like you're entering a very different speed zone.
All right, so we can look at those things too, and if we talk to people about the possibility of the driver feedback sign.
Thank you.
And I'll check with NHMA first, probably, on local traffic and figure all that out.
Thank you, Neil.
All right. So new business, we have health and dental return of surplus.
Sure, you saw that letter. We're actually getting back $43,000. Unless there's objection, my suggestion is we don't just take a check, but take the premium holiday in December, just because then they don't have to send it to us, and it's in there. It ends up in the same place anyways. And what we've done with these returns before is return the percentage paid by employees, paid by retirees, and split it across based on what people have paid in, if that makes sense. And we would just do that also in December.
I think that approach makes sense.
And it's always good to get a surplus return.
I like that approach too.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Neil. And then 2021 budget meetings.
Just I put in the schedule next week. I'll have, believe it or not, next week, you'll get your budget books with all the budgets, and your next meeting begins meeting with department heads, going through the budgets. Seems like we just did this.
Oh God. All right. Thanks for that.
And it's probably worth noting here that next meeting is the 9th. Let me make sure it's the 9th, and then you meet every week for those 4 weeks, the 9th through the 30th in November, every Monday.
Okay. Thanks for that reminder. Anna's having internet issues and she doesn't know what's going on, so we might have lost her. Okay. Now we can move on to town administrator updates.
Sure. I mentioned I start tomorrow, the next 2 days, meeting with department heads, going through budgets. Stephen already mentioned the agreement with Central New Hampshire Regional Planning is done, so that's all set. Next, also on the 9th, we've scheduled a public hearing on refinancing. If you're refinancing bonds or notes, you have to have a public hearing. You have the authority to do that, but by public hearing. So we're following bond counsel's recommendations, and we've scheduled that for that night. We're working on our election prep. There's an election next week, I believe. This year we were scheduled to replace the server at the town hall, but we had moved the server. We had added a second server to the Bates building, meaning a second one from the one at the town hall. They were connected at one point, and then they were having issues, so they added one. So actually we were able to transfer everything to that second server, which is sitting next to the other one. So we've bought ourselves a few more years with that server without having to replace the one here. We'll all be on the same server, which will be good. And it eliminates the VPN, which connected separately. So it's a much less complicated system in general. So I think that's been a good thing. We put out the recommendations for Halloween. Ken already mentioned that Olivewood or Hopkinton Solar is trying to set up a meeting. Carol Harless, the town clerk, let me know she's intending to be closed on the day after the election, November 4th. She will be open. Somebody will be here to do registrations and things actually on election day. So she will not be closed that day, but the next day. And we talked about the rail trail parking signs. There were 3 of them there. 2 of them were on private property. The one on town property is down. So I know the trail committee approached about possible handicap parking, and I know the abutters don't want any parking there. So I don't know if at some point you want to consider what you want to do there, but the no parking signs that were put up on town property have been removed. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so we have public forum for our remaining 3 attendees. Oh, Anna's back.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to weigh in for public comment, feel free to raise your hand. All right. All right, then we'll move on to other. Anyone have anything for other? We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Okay, then I think that leaves us with our one non-public session. So for those attending. We're gonna go into non-public, and then we will not conduct any other business. We will adjourn the meeting. So thank you all for joining us tonight. So
Want to do the motion before I leave?
yeah. Who wants to do that? Motion to go into
Move we go into
non-public.
non-public under 91-A:3 Roman 2 little e to discuss pending litigation.
I'll second.
All right. Sabrina's yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
and we lost Anna again. So that'll do it. Thank you,
Okay.
Robin.
Bye, Robin.
Welcome.
Thanks.
I'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.